The next trait we look at is the B trait. And the key concept of this trait is actually viewpoint. And this trait is actually, apart from the D being above 32, this trait is the most important trait on the whole test and gives us the most amount of information. Because this trait really looks at the person's motivation. And so, you know, you can have, like, let's say, really high activity and a person is really active and but if their B is really low, maybe they're very active at causing problems. But if their B is really high, then they're probably really active at actually solving problems. And so everything relates back to the B trait. The B trait tells us what the person's intentions are. And it looks a lot at these things, you know, how a person views a problem. And there's basically, you know, there's two ways to handle a problem. So here we have a problem. And we can either handle it as you, as a thetan, or we can handle it from reactive mind. One of these ways of handling the problem solves it and doesn't create any more problems. The other way of handling it actually starts to create more problems. You know, I'll give you an example. I come out of a meeting, I go down to my car, and what's on the windscreen?
Ticket.
Parking ticket. Now I have two ways that I can decide to handle this. So I choose the reactive mind way, which we call, remember, to dramatise. And I see this ticket and it's like, no, how can they do this to me, those bastards, And I jump in the car and it's like, you know, I'm driving down the road, those guys, and it's like I'm running people off the road, and, you know, and I get into the office, you know, and there's 15 people in the work pool. I go, oh, look, I got a parking fine. And everyone looks over and they run over and go, oh, really? What happened? The bastards, you know. There's 15 people stopped working for half an hour. And then I sit down, I get on my computer, that's it, and I write a letter, you know. And, you know, basically just bend the truth a little bit. And then I'd send this letter in, and, you know, 2 weeks later I get a letter back with, not only do I not get out of the fine, but now they've added a $20 fee just because I wrote the letter. And then, you know, I write another letter and it's like, you know, then I decide that's it. I'm taking it to court. So I go to court and I pay $1,000 to a barrister. I sit there and in the end I lose, and, you know, I've got the money, the fine to the barrister, the court costs, and the fine now went from $60 to $300 with late fees and penalties. And I'm really upset. And during this period it's like, you know, quite some attention has been lost in other areas. Or I can handle it as me. Damn. I knew I shouldn't have stayed that extra 10 minutes. Damn. You know, and jump in the car and it's like, you know, you're a bit pissed off with yourself. And you get to work and you go, oh, that's it. And you get some sticky tape and you tape it on your computer screen. You go, oh, you know what? I'm going to use this ticket and I'm going to make it my motivation for my biggest sales week ever. And so you jump on the phones and you're ringing like crazy, and it's like, you go, yes, it's a deal. And you get the ticket, thank you. And, you know, you go through and you get to the end of the week and you have the best week you've ever had, and you get the ticket and pull it off your screen and you write a check and you write a little letter saying, thank you for the parking ticket. It was what caused my biggest week ever. Thank you very much. You attach it and you send it off. And it's like, there's a big difference, isn't it, on how that's handled. And it's really what we're looking at on this B trait. Is like, is a person more solution orientated? Or are they more, or solution orientated, meaning they're higher up? Or are they more problem orientated, like they find a problem and they want to solve it by creating more problems? And really you could say at around minus 20 is sort of what we'd call the make-break point on this. So like above the minus 20, we're seeing someone that's starting to become more solution orientated. And below minus 20, we're getting someone that's more problem orientated. And we can look at it from this perspective. You know, if a person, if this is a mountain, it's like someone that's, say, down at minus 100 is sitting right at the bottom of this mountain. And so when they go to solve a problem, it's like their viewpoint only stretches out to about here. So when they go to solve a problem, they only can see the effects of the solution out to about this point. Whereas if someone is now higher up the mountain, when they go to solve a problem, they can see out a lot further. So they go, hey, if I do this, it could cause that problem, or it could cause this problem. This guy can't see those problems, he can only see in here. Now the person at the top of the mountain, you know, he has like 360-degree view. And so when he goes to solve a problem, he can see a long way what effects it's going to have. And you can imagine, this is, you know, these guys are at a bar and they see this really beautiful woman, you know, and they're all married. They see this really beautiful woman and it's like she's, you know, flowing some, like, you know, you could probably have sex with me if you tried type flow. And this guy goes, wow, this is exciting. He goes over and he meets a girl and buys her some drinks and, you know, he's married and he thinks, you know, my wife will never find out, I'm going to go for it. This guy, you know, he goes over and he sees a girl and buys some drinks and then going, you know, my wife, it's like, oh, geez, I don't know, he'll probably feel bad about it, it might affect my marriage, and, you know, it's like, could be, you know, he's looking at the effects further out. And it's like, you know, it's like, there'll only be one night, is it really worth it for probably, I'll have it on my attention for quite some time. Bigger stuff it, I'll do it anyway. But at least he looked at the effects and he could see them. This guy up here, he sees the girl and he goes, there's no way I'm even going to go over there and talk to her. Because this is going to start off a whole series of things I'm going to have to overcome and solve. And so you get the difference. And if a person's in the workplace, now this is a person, they solve the problem, you know, with, it won't really matter if I put an extra hour on my timesheet, who cares? You know? This guy, he might want to engage, geez, I'd like to get that extra hour, I sort of deserve it. But instead, you know, he goes and sees his boss and goes, look, I think I deserve a pay rise, and, you know, and talks about it that way. You know, this guy, he will actually go to his boss and do a deal, say, you know what, I don't like the timesheet, can we do some deal where I get paid on my results? And it's a totally different viewpoint. You know, this is the person that, like, you know, they handle the parking ticket and make an unbelievable scene out of it. This guy is the one that sits there and goes, rightio, this is a message. I just need to get my production way through the roof. And we know that when the B trait goes below minus 20, it's starting to become warning signs. Because we're bringing a person in that may not be, so they actually could be coming in with a little bit more sand than you need. They could bring in more problems than you need. These guys up here is a good sign that they're probably going to create more solutions and, you know, make things flow better and make the organisation grow. And one thing with the guys higher up, they're very much into seeing flows. It's hard from up here to see a flow. You can't see any rivers or creeks from up here. You might be able to see the river, but you can't see where it flows. From up here, you see where it goes, and you see that creek joins in there, and you can see how the flow works. And we know through surveying like quite a few hundred companies and financial controllers, and then testing them, that when we surveyed these guys, for the companies that said they were very happy with their financial controller, the only common denominator in their actual personality graphs was that their B was above 0. Whereas the ones that said they really weren't so happy or were not really sure, the Bs were below 0. Because as a financial controller, you need to be able to see flows. It's like, you know, if I have some money down the back of the room, and this is my viewpoint, it's like, you know, I know there's money down there, but I can't see how I'm going to get it around all the tables and jugs and stuff. But from up here, I can see, oh yeah, you can just walk up there and bring it around here, and then I'll have it. And even with sales guys, you see some sales guys that can't see flows, they go to and see a prospect, and they talk to the prospect, and they come back and they go, no, he wasn't really qualified. Now you send a guy with a good B trade, a good flow, he goes and sees the guy, and goes, yeah, well, he's not really, you know, he wasn't qualified, but I found out his brother, you know, has this business and he could actually use all our services, and then he had this other friend, and they start to see how this person may not be able to buy off them, but they get all their flows off them and get them to see their flows. And so someone that needs to create, like business development managers, for instance, it's like that's their job, is to open up and find new channels to sell to and this sort of thing. It's like they need to be able to see flows. Whereas people that work only on a detail of a flow, so they're down on the river and they just got to scoop water out, it's like they don't need to know where the water comes from or where it goes. They work on a detail. And that's the difference, say, between, you know, a bookkeeper and a financial controller. Because a bookkeeper works on the detail. They don't necessarily need to see the flow. But a financial controller, his job is to keep cash flow happening. And he's got to see all the time. It's like if we do this, it could affect our cash flow in 6 months. Or we do that, or we take this on, or this new product is going to solve that problem. It's always looking at the flow of things. Whereas bookkeepers, all they do is just look at the detail. Oh yeah, we bought that, I enter it. Oh, they're purchasing that, I enter it. Money came in, I enter it. And it's just, they're looking at detail. And so the B trait isn't as important when a person is only looking at detail. So, you know, for bookkeepers, you know, a minus 20 B trait is like, you know, is okay. For a financial controller, we'd really want to see it above 0. It's going to have to be 0 or more for a bookkeeper. For a financial controller. You know, when we're getting into someone that's, becoming, you know, the executive director or, you know, the high executives, it's like they really need to be able to see flows and they need to have a good B trait. For some jobs, because see what happens too, the guys down at this minus 20 range down here, they're more into slow and stop. And so for some jobs this is okay. I mean, there are some jobs where people just slow things down and stop people, like police, for instance. You know, most police that are above this level end up in like criminal investigation, those sort of things. Whereas the police below here, they like to be in traffic operations group and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I can slow. I stopped him. I saved him. They're
like auditors.
Yeah, they can be too. But the thing is, with a good auditor, will actually have a high B, because he can see the flows and quickly, you know, and see where there's a problem. And a high B auditor will actually be really good for you because he's not going to be so interested in so much of the detail. He's going to be more interested in the whole flow. And is someone sucking out some of the flow?
Well, maybe not so much. What about quality assurance?
Quality assurance, yeah. In a normal organisation, quality assurance, a low B would be good. If you look at the way this, you know, we've looked at this organising board, the cycle of production sometimes, and we look at this division 5, which is the quality division. And in a normal organisation, quality is about like find the mistake and stop things, and, you know, and they seem to be quite good. The interesting part in the quality division with the Hubbard management systems, with the organising board, it's like, yeah, their stat within the division is to find faults. All right, but the product of the division is to actually increase productivity. And actually, the way that's measured is like number of staff divided by, you know, money collected or gross income. So you can see they've got an interesting sort of dichotomy here, is they've got to go and find faults without creating stops and slows. And they get their stat, you know, the individual people in here, their stat is like, yeah, I found 16 faults this week. And actually, like this first department, there's 3 departments in this division. The first department finds faults. The second department enhances staff. And the third department retrains staff. So this here, all they do is find faults and then put people into either be trained or be retrained. And to be trained, the company pays usually. To be retrained, the staff member has to come up and do it in their own time. Because it's like, how many times should you have to train someone? Yeah, once. And so you can see here, it's like quite interesting because most quality systems only work and look at the quality of the product. Oh yeah, there's a bad quality and we've got to go back to the machine and sort that out. But with the harbour management system, with this quality division, it's actually like, okay, there's a fault in the product, let's go back and find who is not trained or what process is not known about or what process maybe doesn't even exist that needs to be put in. And it goes back and right to the core of it. And most times it's staff training or cramming staff on what they missed in their training in the first place. And that's why they have this statistic of productivity, because their job is to always increase productivity. And it's like most quality managers don't know this. They think their job is to improve quality. But one thing we know for sure, that it's like the better and faster something flows, the better the quality becomes. Look at this with tradesmen. Anyone here a tradesman or done a trade? If you work with tradesmen, it's the fast guys that actually do the best quality. The guys that work really slow and piss fart around, they're the ones that have all the defects. The guys that run it and get 6 or 7, you know, things done to other people's 2 or 3, they're the ones that have, it's amazing, have the 0 defects. So if you just keep pushing speed and speed and speed, it's like the worst thing you can do is say, look, let's slow down and get it right. No, let's get it right and speed up. This is the attitude to have. The B trait has a lot to do with where a person sits also emotionally. And there's we know that like when people are up higher on the B trait, they're sitting at an emotional level that allows them to, that gives us a lot of information actually about how they view things and how they decide to tackle different situations. And we know that this area down here is the stop and slow area, and this area up here is the flow area. And this thing about emotion, we're going to spend a bit of time on. And the first thing to look at is actually what is emotion. So once my little computer cranks up. Here we go. So if we understanding more about emotion allows us to understand a lot more about what's going on with people and what's going on especially in our workplace and how to handle different situations. And the thing is what emotion is, you'll see it's made up of this word motion. And my projector's on drugs. And so we know that, like, you know, life has something to do with motion. Everything is in motion at a different pace. And you know, if you walk into a room with a bunch of 5-year-olds in it, it's going to be running at quite a high pace, isn't it? If we run into a room with a bunch of 60-year-olds in it, it's going to be a little bit more slower, unless it's Roland, of course. And what normally happens if you put the 60-year-olds and the 5-year-olds together is like we have this situation going on where the older people can't handle the motion of the slower people. And so what happens is generally that gradually or very quickly the 60-year-olds will slow the 5-year-olds down, and the 60-year-olds will actually speed up a little bit, and they'll get to a point where they're running at about the same motion. Because there's a difference in being able to tolerate different motions. And if you're not in a good mood and things, some people are running around and they're doing really well, this becomes frustrating for you. And if you're doing really well and you see people that are really grinding, that's frustrating for the person doing really well. And everything in this universe is actually in motion. Even though we're pretty much standing or sitting still. It's like right now we're sitting on a planet that's revolving. You know, the planet is moving at about 1,000 miles an hour, you know, going around, and it does it every 24 hours. And every 364.25 days it does a full circuit of the sun. And our solar system itself, you know, circulates around the Milky Way galaxy, and the Milky Way galaxy is moving. So we're actually in quite some motion right now. It will take a lot of calculations to work out how to actually sit still. And it's assuming that our universe isn't moving. And if we go down to a smaller level, it's like, you know, our blood is moving, you know, around in our body, and, you know, if all our digestive system's operating, and depending on if we had how much Indian we ate is how fast it's running. And then inside, you know, we have the cells, they all move, and inside the cells we have chemicals, and we have the atoms, and in the atoms are all moving, and in the atoms we have electrons and neutrons, and inside the nucleus and the neutrons we have quarks, and I can't remember the other things, and they're all in motion. And we know, actually, if you look at quantum physics, that we know if we pull all the motion out of something, it no longer exists. In actual fact, matter is only made up of motion. And there's a way of measuring the amount of motion in something. Does anyone know how you measure it? What the measurement of motion is? Physical objects? Is temperature. So the higher the temperature, the more motion there is. And if we say, look at steam at 500 degrees Celsius, it's got quite some motion, hasn't it? It's moving around. Whereas we look at water at 50 degrees, it's like, it's not as much motion, is there? It just sits there, you know, and if you stomp on it, it moves around a bit. And then if we look at ice at -20, it's like even when we stomp on it, it still remains, you know, it might move as a whole block, but it becomes quite motionless. Would you agree? And we know that actually, when we get down to -273 degrees centigrade, we actually have no motion. And at that temperature, matter can't exist. It's only held together and only exists because of motion. And the thing is how do we get down to -273 degrees? You'd need to be -274, wouldn't you? But if you can't actually go below this temperature, this is actually called absolute zero. And this was discovered by a guy with the surname of Kelvin. And I only know his surname is Kelvin because it's called the Kelvin scale. And so he starts his scale at -273 degrees is 0 degrees Kelvin. And so when you get to 0 degrees Celsius, this is actually plus 273 degrees Kelvin. Make sense? And physicists have been able to get matter down very close to -273 degrees. They actually send sound waves through matter, and the movement of it actually like makes it give up its energy, which is motion. In actual fact, they made fridges now that work with a speaker in the back of them. It'll be one day they'll get these fridges, they'll come on the market commercially. But they send these sound waves and they get things right down, you know, like -272.9999, and the matter starts to disappear. Now all that's happened is they've relocated the motion out of the matter and they've relocated it somewhere else. They haven't actually destroyed energy, but they've destroyed the substance. The substance no longer exists because there's no motion to hold it together. And it's quite interesting because our whole universe is all about motion. This is what our universe works on. And, you know, as you might notice that it's like faster motion moves, and when it comes next to slower motion, what happens? The fast motion moves to the slower motion. If you have a hot room and a cold room, the hot room will cool down if you open the door, and the cool room will warm up, and they'll actually, like, so one will slow down and one will speed up. And it's exactly the same with people. And the letter E for emotion actually means outward. So we're looking at the outward motion when we're looking at emotion. And Mr. Hubbard, actually, he made this observation. And he said that life is motion, which makes sense if you look at what these physicists have discovered. And he says that therefore your success in any area of life and living depends only on two factors. And the first one is your willingness to experience motion. So if you're not so willing to experience motion, life's not going to be so great for you. You know, you talked about a friend, he can't experience the motion of being on a plane now. So it's tough for him. You know, he's got to take sedatives just to be able to get on a plane. He's got to basically trick himself or delude himself that it's like there's actually no motion. And, you know, if you have young kids, you know, they have quite a willingness to experience motion, don't they? It's like you watch them learning to ride a bike, and they jump on and they fall off, and they scrape their leg, cry a bit, jump back on, and then fall off, and then they scrape their arm, and then they jump on, and then they hit their head. And it's just, they just keep having this willingness to experience motion. And then the thing is, though, it's like, you know, even if you buy yourself a Ferrari and you're willing to experience motion and you're driving at 300 miles an hour, might be a bit much, so say 300 kilometres an hour, and you're flying down the road, it's like this is good willingness to experience motion, but there's another part plays into it. And he added this second part is, you know, also depends on your ability to control motion. And so you can nearly graph this out. If you look at this, up this side here is like willingness to experience motion. Across the bottom here is time. And then if we do a second axis, we can say here ability to control motion. And so a person comes into the world, and usually they're born, and you know, their willingness to experience motion for the first 6 months is not so great, is it? And so they come in, and in the first 6 months they have quite a steep line here, and by the time they get to about 1 year, 14 months old, it's like they become very willing to experience motion. And then as time goes on and they get into their teenage years, generally it's like, you know, it starts to drop off pretty fast. Now, so you sit around and you just like listen to your iPod and in-flow TV. Then what I've noticed is for a lot of people is that, you know, it goes up a little bit from, you know, their teenage years through to their early 20s. And then once the person gets into their 30s, it sort of drops off to the point where you get to this point and you have no willingness at all to experience motion, and what do you reckon happens? You go to a morgue and you're on the scene of a dead body. Not a lot of motion, is there? But at the same time, is our ability to control motion, you could say, is equal to your knowledge of life. As you get older, would you agree that your ability to control motion, when you jump on a bike and within a few short weeks, it's like you can control the bike, and now it becomes very rare that you fall off. I mean, who fell off their bike when they were like 20 times before they were 10? Who's fallen off 20 times since? So your ability to control motion really increased, didn't it? Or did your willingness to experience motion drop? And so now you just don't go over any sort of threshold. When you're a kid, you would actually push the threshold. You know? Someone would take you skiing, they go jump off this cliff. When you're 15, you go, sure. Wow, that hurt, but geez, it was fun. When you're 30, it's like, oh no, I don't go on black runs, I just stay on blue. Because I like to be able to still drink my beer at the end of the day. And so, you know, it's quite a steep learning curve, and then it goes up like this. And so actually when you die, you're at the point where you're most in control of motion. But unfortunately, you're not willing to experience any motion. This is pretty horrible, isn't it? And so really what's happening, if you look at this, it's like what we have happen, which actually drops the experience or the willingness to experience motion, what drops it is engrams get restimulated. You know, another one here, and another one here, and another one here. You know, here in these years, normally the necessity to get out and work sort of gets you back into some sort of more, you know, willing to experience motion, and then they start, you know, more and more of them, actually what we say is they key in. Because some engrams will lay dormant and never actually appear your whole life. Some will come in when you're 20. You get married, and this actually stimulates an engram. And then you wonder, you go, you know, she was so beautiful before I married her, and now look, what happened? Of course, the men don't change. Hey.
Not at all.
Yeah. Good girl. And so, you know, and this is what happens. These engrams get restimulated, and then they actually drop off our willingness to experience motion. This is pretty sad, because like, I think ideally, you know, if we could just keep this up high and then go, oh, the body's getting a bit worn out, bang. This would be the best way to live life, wouldn't it? And like, you know, to live that sort of life, it's like you're going to have to do something about these engrams. But, you know, that's why some people can get through to their 60s and stay really in action and willing, you know, to get out there and just, you know, and you go, wow, he's just like a 20-year-old. It's amazing. And other 20-year-olds, you go, wow, he's just like a 60-year-old. You know, they're down here. They're not willing to move or experience any sort of motion. And we can actually plot this onto a scale. And this scale, it's like a soundtrack to life. If you understand emotions and where they sit on this scale and where people are sitting in their willingness to experience motion, you can learn a lot about them. And it's like a soundtrack to life. You know, you sit there and you're watching a movie, and you know, like Jaws, and you hear "Nurn, nurn," and it's like you're going, get out of the water, there's sharks coming, quick, get out. And they're like swimming around, these beautiful people, you know, they're just going to be wasted. And you hear, and then it's just red everywhere. And, you know, this scale we're going to look at is the same thing. It's like when you're going to go into a deal or employ someone or do a deal with them, it's like, you know, as you move towards them, it's like, no. It's like, oh, might just go over here. Or, you know, you're at the bar one night and you see this beautiful girl and you think, oh, I might buy her a drink. You move towards her, it's like, no. It's like, oh, I might just go back over here. And so this scale that Hubbard put together, and it's actually in a book, out of a book called Science of Survival. This book. And it's called Science of Survival because it is the science of surviving. If you can actually understand the people around you and their willingness to tolerate motion, whether they want to increase motion or whether they want to decrease it, this is actually what survival's about. If you only ever had people around you that wanted to increase motion and experience more and more motion, it's like you'll survive much better. And there's a little bit written on the topic. And so I don't think we're going to quite cover it all in the next half hour. But I'll give you an overview that's going to help you when it comes to your hiring and actually when you're running staff. And maybe a little bit, you know, outside of work as well. And so this scale, it actually goes all the way up to 40 and it goes down to minus 40. But we're just going to look at this section of it. But we're starting and we're looking at this, what we call an emotional tone level of games. And I know that most times you don't really think of a game as being an emotional tone level, but when somebody is playing games, they're in this emotional tone level. of called games, and we give it a number of 22.0. And these numbers are arbitrary. They don't mean anything else other than to show us how close or far away each emotion is from another one. And when someone's in games, it's like they have a lot of energy and they're in there, and it's like they're not interested in things, they're not interested in inflow at all. All they're interested in is outflow. When someone's playing a game, they'll run and run and run, and they'll kick around, you know, some pig's bladder wrapped in cow skin, in rain or mud, and they'll endure all sorts of injury and exhaustion just to win the game. And they don't need to be paid, because the winning the game, or actually playing the game itself, is the reward. And this is where kids sit at a lot. Kids sit a lot in games. Do you ever notice this? It's like they're always playing a game. Then we have this next point, which we actually call a make-break point, which is antagonism. Which means, antagonism means like against. And this tone level antagonism, this is when, you know, you go and say to someone, hey, you want to come out and play ball with me? And they're like, what for? Well, I thought you must want to play. Well, who do you think you are? I don't play ball. This is antagonism. You go to someone in your office, go, hey, can you just type this up for me? I'm busy. It's antagonism. The person might be busy, but if they're up in games, they'll be like, wow, I'm really busy. Let me see if I can fit that in as well. It's a lot different. And we say it's a make-break point because at this point, when someone's making decisions, above here they're making decisions to be more survival for themselves and the people around them. Below this point, they're making decisions to succumb, and succumb means to give in to life. So they're making decisions basically that are leading them towards this point of no motion. Because if you are actually slowing things down, what are you doing? You're dying. And so this is like the make-break point of surviving longer or suicide. And whether the person physically takes themselves out or whether it takes them the next 50 years from this point, it's suicide. They're making decisions to slow things down. And this doesn't mean you don't go and slow things down or stop things that should be slowed down or stopped. If your child's running out on the road, it's like you stop your child running out on the road. But you know, have you ever been in a meeting and you've got the best idea and it's just going to be so great, and then all you've got is somebody there telling you how it's not going to work? Or you better be, you know, let's just be careful with this and let's explore everything that could go wrong first. This is not so sane. Down here at the bottom, at 0, which isn't the bottom, actually goes lower, but at 0.0 we have body death. This is here. This is where the person is no longer willing to experience motion. And the thing is, it actually goes down this scale to -40. Because people go into, like, you know, they've gone through the point of where body death is here, their body still moves around, they're sort of checked out, and now it's like they play all sorts of funny games with motion. We're not going to look into that so much because it doesn't enter into the workplace as much. We also have here this thing of sanity and insanity. This is also the line, and it's like, you know, you quite often hear of sanity and insanity being talked about, and you hear it's like, you know, he was criminally insane, so he couldn't be responsible for his actions. But it's like, tell me how you commit a crime and be sane. It's not possible. So the whole argument to me is just flawed. But here, when someone is actually slowing things down and stopping them unnecessarily, that's insane. When someone is actually trying to work out how to make things go faster and create more good effects for the people around them and their friends and their organisation and their family and their community, this is sanity. And so we actually have a make-break point here of sanity and insanity, which is also the same make-break point of someone surviving or dying. And there's a lot more levels in here. We've got a level here at 4.0 we call enthusiasm. And this is a person that's actually like wants to see motion happen. They're enthusiastic about the activity at hand. They're spiritually engaged in what's going on. And like I said to you earlier, it's not always a person that's going around going, hey, I'm so enthusiastic. Yeah. No, it's like quite often enthusiasm is the person that's just like they're enthusiastic about getting a job done. Out of my way, I've got to get this done. That's like, you know, if you watch sport, the players don't really run down the field. You know, quite often they're really enthusiastic. In fact, they're in games, but they look like this. You know, they're like, it looks like they're nearly in pain, but this is just their intention to get something done. So enthusiasm is like someone that's just really interested in seeing motion go forward a lot. In actual fact, at this point is where you actually start to come up with real solutions. Below 4.0, it's like they're not quite real solutions. So it's only when you're at 4.0 or above that you actually have solutions that become quite a benefit. With this other level of boredom. At boredom, a person is basically a spectator. They can't decide to basically get themselves involved in an activity, so they just decide to be bored and I'll just be a spectator. Just above boredom, we have contented. And you might start to see how these tone levels start to work together and why it's a scale, because what actually happens is a person moves through these tone levels. They don't just jump from body death to games or go from games to body death. Even if it happens very fast, it's still, they run through the scale fast. They don't jump from one to the other. And you can see that antagonism and boredom and content and enthusiasm, they're all pretty close together. And from a number point of view. And if someone's bored, they have the choice always of whether they want to go up the tone scale to solve it or whether they want to go down to try and solve the problem. And so someone's sitting there, they're bored, they're like, so boring. Gee. And from this point, they've got two choices. They can either get antagonistic. Look at the bitch. Or they can go, that looks interesting. And start to get, feel content about what's going on. And this will get them into being enthusiasm, which is like a manifestation of very strong interest. They start to get involved in something. And so a person always has the choice of which way they want to move on this tone scale. And see, just above boredom is interest. And a person just starts, out of boredom, they'll start to get interested. Then they'll get content about what they're interested in, and then they can get enthusiastic. Or they can go down and get antagonistic. And see, monotony is just near boredom. And then just below antagonism, we have anger. And anger is an interesting tone level because it's one of the tone levels that's very obvious when someone's angry. And it's the same all over the planet. People are very the same as they go down the tone scale. They become very unique as they go up the tone scale. Like if you look at every footballer, they have their own style, their own specialty, and when they're in games, they're very unique. When they get angry with each other and start fighting, they all look the same. You ever notice that? An angry person just always looks angry. And we know when someone's angry too, it's like they find it very hard to be honest. It's like normally when a person's angry, they're spitting out accusations that aren't so true. They just want to basically rip the person's head off. And play with their spinal cord. And what's more interesting is people generally vent their anger at the people that they're closest to and they have the most affinity for. There's my little angry boy. Okay, and you can see here someone would go through from boredom into mild interest to content to strong interest and then get enthusiastic. Now you see how these things work together. Just above body death we have this level called apathy. Apathy is pretended death. This is, you see a cat catches a spider and, it plays with the spider and it lets the spider go and then the spider tries to run away and the cat's like, yes, and then jumps on it again and starts the game for the cat again. Then the spider goes, this is not working. I'm just going to pretend to die. And it lays on its back and the cat's knocking it around. It just sits there and what happens to the cat? Yeah, it gets bored. Goes back into antagonism and finds another spider. And the spider goes, thank you very much. And off it goes. And people do the same thing. We have this thing called chronic tone level, is actually the tone level that a person basically lives in or where they go to solve problems. And interestingly enough, I'd say probably a big portion of Australians probably have a chronic tone level of apathy. And when something happens to them, it's like they go into apathy to try and solve the problem. And so, you know, things have been a bit tough and they get a letter in the mail from the bank telling them that they're going to have to sell their house. It's only like, you know, if I pretend to be dead, maybe the bank will forget about me. But, you know, it doesn't quite happen. And you see a lot of people in apathy. Just watch people watch TV. There's some TV's not that way. Some TV you watch and it's like actually, you know, it's creative and, you know, that's like that show MasterChef. It's just rating so well. It's like, finally, someone put on something that had some creativeness in it, didn't have all the bitchiness in it. And, you know, they're surprised why so many people watch it.
What about, you know, you read about high-profile sports people that get chronic fatigue syndrome, where, you know, you think it's the complete opposite. These are people that thrive on motion and games, but then really struggle to get going, you know, wake up in the morning and get going.
Sure. And it's interesting because it's like, you know, a lot of the time you get a sports person and they run around on the field and they've got so much energy, and then, you know, they interview the wife and they go, wow, it must be difficult living with someone with so much energy. And they go, are you kidding? The guy never gets off the couch. And it's like, so when they're playing the game, they're happy and they can run, they have lots of energy, and the rest of the time it's like some of these guys have nothing. That's all they have. And chronic fatigue syndrome, we'll talk about that. Actually, it comes up in one of the traits, and we'll see what happens. But what we have is we have what's called acute tone level. As in, you know, it's momentary. And so you might have a guy that's in apathy, and then the guys come around and drag him off the couch, and, you know, they don't take no for an answer, and they get him out and they start kicking the footy with the guy, and he comes up. And next thing you know, they're playing a game. And they're trying to outmark each other, and they're trying to ride up each other's back, and, you know, they're trying to hip and shoulder each other out of the way and get the ball the most. And it's like, for that hour or two, they're right up in games. Then the guy goes home and he goes back to his chronic tone level. But it's going to take, you know, this guy will go right through all these tone levels. He's in apathy, and it's like, you want to come and play footy? Oh, no. No. Oh. You know, and then you'll probably get a little bit, you know, pissed off with them. No, I said I don't want to play footy. Get out of here. Now, if you know the tone scale, you know, great. We've got the guy out of apathy. Now he's in anger. And it's not going to be long, we're going to have him out in the footy field. Then he'll get antagonistic. I'm not the sort of person that plays footy. Another tone level up. You know? Then he's going to go, oh, you know what? Last time I played footy, it was just like, nah. You know, yeah, mate, but look, here, catch. And he's like, oh, gets a bit interested. All right, let's go. And the problem is like quite often we give up on people. And see, just above apathy you have grief. And when someone's crying, and they're like, oh, it's horrible. And then they get angry. It's like, if you don't know this tone scale, you think, oh, I better get them back into grief. That was better. But you're much better having an angry person. In actual fact, this is the whole flaw with psychiatry. They believe that a cured person is someone in apathy. It's like, you know, he was so uncontrollable before, and now we have him sedated and on these drugs. Now he's like very, you know, good community person. And all we're going to do is wipe up his drool. But this is the problem. They don't understand the tone scale, and they don't realise that it's like, you know, that they took a guy out of anger and made him apathetic, and now he's cured. You know, you get a person crying all the time. It's like, you know, just give them some antidepressants and they'll go into apathy, and it's like, oh good, now they're not crying anymore. Fantastic. You know, take someone into anger management and we'll just drive them down the tone scale so that they can't handle anything anymore. And so if someone's in grief, this is the only time you use sympathy. Sympathy used for anywhere else on the tone scale drags someone down the tone scale. This is why sometimes when someone gives you sympathy, it's like you feel like you've just been snotted all over. So you go, oh, yeah. Oh. And my mum does it sometimes. I just got to slap her around a bit and go, Mum, just cut it out. I don't need any sympathy. What I need is a foot up the arse. But if someone's in grief and they're like, and you come and you go, honey, what's up? Look what they did to your hair. Oh. It's okay, you know, it's all right. Give them sympathy. This is the right thing to do. And of course, they'll come out of grief and then they'll go into fear. But how can I go out with my hair like this? And at that point, you want to get them into anger. And it's like, well, who did it to you? Oh, that bastard hairdresser. It's like, yeah, now you're getting her up. Then it's like now, at anger, you can just start to get, you know, antagonistic. Yeah, those hairdressers, they're all like the same. You know, they don't really care about their customers, they just want the money. Yeah, they do. And then you just get bored while they're in antagonism. You know, yeah. Then you get interested. Yeah, you know what? Why don't you just like straighten your hair out a little bit or just tie it up? And they go, yeah, I might be able to do that. But you're trying to solve it down here. If you try and give a person in grief solutions, forget it. In grief, you don't want solutions. It ends your grief. This is horrible. Because when you're in these tone levels, you want to be in them. And then, you know, just below anger, actually this is meant to be a little bit closer together, but just below anger we have hate. You know, so someone's angry and it's like, I can't believe this happened, I hate, and they go into hate, and they're on their way down the tone scale. And then we have this very interesting level here, which is covert hostility, and this is like a parking spot for low tone people. For people below 2.0 on the tone scale tend to park here. Because at 2.0 and below, a person has some spikes. And like we said earlier, it's not so sociably acceptable to have spikes, so what a person does is they become covertly spiky. They become covertly hostile, they're hostile. It's like here they are, you know, they hate you. They're scared that you're going to find out about them, and so they cover it up and they make it look like they live up here on the tone scale. You know, if you want to practice how this feels or know how it feels, it's like just, you know, in fact you could even do this. You know, look at the person next to you. All right? Now, just hate them. Look at them and hate them and smile at the same time. Yeah, it's horrible. It feels horrible, and the person looking at you going, huh? That's only because you haven't practiced enough. But, you know, we all go down into these tones. I'm sure that, you know, all of us in our lifetime have cried. All of us have, you know, covered up the fact that we hate someone. You know, all of us have been angry. It's like, so we all go down and in here. But these are acute tones. If someone lives up here on a tone scale, they, you know, sometimes we'll get dragged down the tone scale. Things will happen. Also, sometimes they might decide to go down the tone scale. That's it. I need to get angry with these guys to sort them out. But the anger isn't a reactive anger. It's an anger to, like, get the person up the tone scale or get them adjusted in some way. It's like when you uncontrollably go down to these levels and you come out and go, oh, I don't know why did I just say that to my kids. They're going to hate me. No. This is when it happens reactively. And the higher toned a person is, the more elastic they are to move around on this tone scale. Someone that's actually down here in the tone scale, occasionally they might pop up here because they just got told they won Tats Lotto, or, you know. Yeah, it's like, yeah. But they'll come back down again. And it's like they'll use the money that they win in Tats Lotto to actually get more control and more dominance and to create more bad things around them.
Does it relate to people like that, say people that want to read books that always make them cry? I just love reading books that make them bawl my eyes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, some people, you know, personally I love going to an emotional movie. I love a movie that's like, you know, goes through and it takes you all over the tone scale. You know, but I don't like a movie, and it's like I like that. I mean, one of the movies I saw recently was that way, was Gran Torino. Did anyone see that movie? That's a movie that just takes you all over the tone scale. But it's like, you know, this movie also, it's like you come out of it wanting to do more for society. you go, you know what, it's like that just inspired me to do more to handle this shit that goes on. And so if the movie has that sort of product, I think it's fine. But if the movie has a product of leaving you going, oh, there is no hope. You know, you come out of it in apathy. You know, and this is what happened. I remember when I came through school, and what happened for some of you guys. When I was 12 or 13, all that was talked about in social studies was basically, you know, the nuclear arms race and the Cold War, and it's like, we basically all thought that we wouldn't make our 30s. I don't know if anyone went through that. It's like,
The Russians to come.
yeah, you know, even to the point where I even made a survival kit and had a motorbike, and I was ready if I ever saw missiles in the air, mate, I was off. I had it all worked out. And like, you know, this was driving the society into apathy. Whereas you had a guy like, you know, John F. Kennedy, it's like he had quite an interesting way of handling the situation. Is he said, let's play a game. Let's see if we can get to the moon by the end of the decade and get to Mars by the end of the next decade. And he was actually, what he was trying to do, he was trying to pull society up the tone scale as a way of solving this whole arms race. And of course, he wasn't so successful at it, was he? Because it's like, this is not okay for actually the guys that really run this planet, they have the desire to keep people down the tone scale. This might not be so true for you, but as you research this stuff more and more, you see what's going on. And tell me a law that's been passed in Australia recently that actually has the product of speeding something up or making more flow. Can anyone give me an example of it? I rest my case. But in actual fact, like the type of governments we have and the type of financial systems and everything we have is all about enslaving us and slowing us down. And we sit here as the guys that, like, with the world on our shoulders, you know, fighting against these unknown barriers and wondering why. It's like I just don't quite get as much out of life as I feel like I should.
Why do you say, you know, people in power want to slow us down? Why do they want to slow us down? Wouldn't it be beneficial for them to speed us up?
It would be if they were on this side of the tone scale. See, guys on this side of the tone scale, it's like if anyone around them gets more successful or more powerful, they get scared. And, you know, there's probably a dozen people on this planet that really control it. Sorry?
So then that's them going up to fear.
That's right. There's probably a dozen guys on this planet that control it, but, you know, I can pretty much tell you, you know, you can name out who they are and what they do, but I can tell you every one of them has an agenda of, like, you know, the population over 1 billion people is unsustainable. You know, people can't control themselves, so we need to govern them fully. Government needs to provide for them. People high on the tone scale, they don't need government to provide for them, they just need government to protect their rights. That's it, that's all government should do. Once government at the turn of the last century started providing, it was the end of our current system. And every other historical power, like, you know, the Roman Empire, the Egyptians, the Greeks, all of them basically lost their society when government started to provide. Because it doesn't work. It's not a sustainable system, I'm sorry, but it's like, just look historically what happens. And I think we're going a little bit off track right now. So back into the business world. It's like, and that was all to answer your question, wasn't it?
That's brilliant.
And so the thing is, it's like, you know, this is where, if you know this tone scale, and it's like any law that comes out or any new product or system or book or movie, you can actually start to see whether it's something that's trying to encourage more production and more flow and more survival, or whether it's actually trying to drive people down the tone scale so they do worse. And, you know, there's all sorts of statistics that you can use to back up slowing something down. But quite often when you look at what governments are trying to do and why they're trying to slow things down, there's no real statistics to back it up. You know, one person in somewhere has some accident and now like 60,000 people in an industry have to suffer because of one person's idiocy. This just becomes nuts. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm just a bit silly because I do calculations, but, you know, I was standing at LA Airport, you know, just after 9/11, and it's like a 2.5 hour wait to get through security. And I was with my family, actually. And I was looking at it, and, you know, LA Airport has 60 million people a year go through it. And I add this up at 60 million people by 2 hours. Right, so it's 120 million hours a year get wasted to go through security. And then you look at it, it's like, how many hours are there in a lifetime? Does anyone know? It's about 720,000 hours. So it's like about, you know, over 100 lifetimes a year are wasted in security, just in one airport. And it's like, but on the other side of it, it's like, you know, how many people's lives are they trying to save? It's sort of like, you know, no one really balances this stuff up. It's like, it's just nuts to waste 100 lifetimes to go and save, you know, 200 or 300 a year. Maybe I'm just a little bit sinister. But the thing is like, you know, the terrorists obviously won. And, you know, then we have asked the question, who are the terrorists? So the thing is, you can use this, we can even use it to look at the whole tone level of a community. Because one of the things that really indicates or tells you what the tone level of society is what's on the front page of the major newspaper publications. Because the media, we always say, oh yeah, the media is like sensationalised it and the media calls this and the media calls that, but no. It's the people that buy the media that cause it, because the media only provides a product that people buy. And if they provide all, you know, enthusiastic and great news on their front page and no one buys their paper, they go out of business. They provide what they do, they sit there every day and it's like, today they put a story on the front about sport, and a good story about sport, and the newspaper circulation went down 4%. So tomorrow they go and they put one in about, like, you know, fear of swine flu, and sales went up 6%. And so they're always playing with the front page to make people buy the paper. And it's like, you know, an editor, all he is really, or even a producer of a TV show, all they are is that they just, if they're good, they're actually good at picking people's tone level. And that's why I was so rapt when you get a show where they pull the bitchiness out of it and they put some creative and it rates so well, because it gives me some hope that maybe the media have got it wrong for a little bit too long. Although, I mean, what other shows run against it? The current affairs shows. Where do they sit on the tone scale? Yeah, they're 1.1. It's like, you know, you must watch this show, your children's lives are in danger. And, you know, you watch the show, and from that point on, you never eat any food that's got a colour in it, because you know that that food colouring could kill my kids. So they just drove people into fear.
I think one of the worst examples is people drive all the kids to school today, even if it's only half a K. Kids don't walk to school anymore. But the safety level's about the same as years ago.
They can't do paper rounds.
Safety level's a lot worse.
They can't do paper rounds. You know, I did paper rounds from when I was 9. I was doing morning and afternoon paper rounds. No, kids aren't allowed to do them anymore because it's too dangerous. Yeah. And, you know, I went through this discussion with my wife. We're sitting in Chadstone Shopping Centre, and I'm hopeless. I lose the kids all the time. And it's like, you know, the kids on the other side, I go, yeah, go, she goes, oh no, but it's dangerous here, you know. And I go, well, how? I go, let's look at the odds, you know. Well, let's look at how many kids come in every day, and let's multiply that out by 365 days, and how many got abducted from Chadstone Shopping Centre, and then out of those ones that got abducted, what harm came to any of them. And it's like, and then we worked out we'd have more chance of winning Tats Lotto like 2 weeks in a row. You know, and so you take all these precautions because of the shadows. And, you know, this now your willingness to experience motion drops off. And it's funny, you know, Hubbard made up this little course called Handling a Dangerous Environment. And the first thing you do in this course is not read the media or watch the news. It's the first step of handling a dangerous environment. Isn't that interesting? Because then you find out there is no dangerous environment to really handle. And so we go up and down, and it's like, you know, if you want to get someone in business to agree with you on something, you've got to really know where their tone level's at. Well, I can't believe you brought your phone in here. And it's on.
No, I had it turned off all the time. I forgot to turn it off after lunch.
I would never forget that. And so, yeah, if you go in, let's say you're doing property development, and it's like, you know, most people that work in councils that you need to get approvals through are in fear. They're always actually scared of doing the wrong thing. And so, of course, they're into stopping everything. They don't want to make a decision. You know, I'll hand it over to him. That's his area. Or like, you know, I'm sure if I hold on to this document for at least a month, I'll be less scared and I'll be able to approve it.
Developer will go away.
Sorry?
Or the developer will go away or whatever.
That's right. And so when you go and you've got to handle someone in fear, you've got to actually bring them up the tone scale. And the way to do that is a person only really accepts communication at about half to one tone level above or below them. And so if you've got a person sitting in anger and you try to talk to them in enthusiasm, you're 2.5 or you're 1.5 points out of their zone of actually receiving the communication. So if you go into this person and you know they're an angry sort of person in the council, and actually, you know, there's physiological things that happen too with these tone levels. So you can actually just look at someone and know what tone level they're in. And you look at a person and it's like they're all like red and you know their corpuscles are showing and they're puffy and it's like they're a bit stiff, because at anger it's like things start to they don't only stop and slow things down around them, they start to get all sorts of depository diseases because they start to stop and their flows in their bodies start to do the same thing. And so you can actually see someone, you can walk in there 50 metres and go, oh, I've got someone in anger. I've got to go in antagonism. And so they're sitting there like, and you walk in and you go, don't you just hate that? And they're looking at you and they go, yeah. And it's like, you know, soulmate, instant connection. And then, you know, they'll tell you about it. Yeah, it's like, I get these developers, they want this rush through and this and that. And you go, yeah, those developers, it's like, you know, I know a lot of them, they really suck, you know. I'm one too, and it's like, I know what a pain in the ass we can be. So, yeah, someone that finally understands. What do you need? You know? And then they start to get a bit interested. And you go, well, you know what? It's like, I want to get this development through. And you know, this guy's in anger, so he likes to squash things. And it's like, you know, you go, it's like, the neighbours are all complaining about it and this and that. I just want to get it approved because I just want to like to see them just suffer. Oh, really? And there's so many different ways to handle people, but if you can actually just spot a little bit where they are on the tone scale, and one way to do that is just to actually start talking to someone. It's good to just practice this. And there's a whole course you can do on this, which I did, which is actually called the Potential Trouble Source / Suppressive Person course, which talks about how to handle and shatter suppression. And in this course, you've actually got to go out on the street. You've actually got to go out in the street and drill this, and you've got to go up to people and actually, you've got to drill actually raising them, picking their tone level and raising them up the tone level, and you actually got to go out in the street and pick a person and get them to raise you up the tone scale. And this is pretty hard, you know, because I've found from doing that course that it's like I'm pretty much more above the emotional tone level of most people, so I'd have to go up to them, and in the way you do a little survey, you ask them some questions, and I'd go up to people in like apathy and go, excuse me, but do you mind if we do a survey? And it was so funny, because I'd never done this before, you know. Normally if I'm given a survey, it's like, hey, can we do this survey? And you'd be going, no. I'm going, sorry, I'll walk with you while we do it, you know. I'll carry your bags. And so I'm there going, you know, you want to do the survey? And it's like, people would feel sorry for me, and I'd never had this flow before. And they'd be going, oh, yeah, all right, because you can see it. I go, oh. And they're going, are you all right? I'm going, yeah. It's like, I just got to ask these questions. You know, when did you get your last haircut? And they're going, well, you know, and they're getting really, they're trying to, I got my last haircut and I actually really enjoyed it, and, you know, it was about a month ago. And they're trying to get you up. It's such a weird experience. And you really get to know how to spot tone levels when you start to actually, you know, play around with it this way. And I hated it because I'd leave people and it's like, not only did they think I was some apathy case, but it's like I knew that I'd drag them down the tone scale. And but it's unbelievable experience to, you know, see what happens and what you're trying to do with people all the time, you know, and you feel you're just dragging their energy out of them. It's like you're pulling this rope, which is their whole, you know, spiritual content I'm just going to take. And but if you go up to someone and they're in a bus stop, and you can even do it in a job interview, you know, but generally in job interviews, what you see in a job interview is the third type of tone level, which is a social tone. Because a person comes in, and it doesn't matter where they are really on an acute or chronic tone, you'll see their social tone. They'll come in and they'll sit there and it's like, you know, they're like really helpful and they're being in enthusiasm and, you know, they're answering the questions and they're doing all this stuff. And we know that social tone lasts 3 months and 1 day. When a person finishes their probation, now you get the chronic tone. Because a person can't keep up social tone forever. The more time you spend with someone, the more you start to see their chronic tone level. You know, for some guys, they've actually learnt their social tone is lower than their chronic tone. You know, the business owner, he's like, hey, he's had the great weekend, he's gone to New Zealand, done 100 things in 100 hours. I just had a friend do this. She went over to New Zealand and she was telling me, she goes, yeah, I went over and I took my office manager and a friend of mine and we went and we did 100 things in 100 hours in New Zealand. They didn't sleep. And that was Carly, you know Carly Crutchfield? But, you know, she's like, you know, she's sort of a bit through the roof on this tone scale. You've met Carly, haven't you?
No, actually.
Oh, haven't you?
Before my time. Yeah.
Sorry?
Before my time.
Oh, was she? Oh, that's right, she didn't do the last round with Bill. Anyway,
So didn't sleep for 100 hours?
oh, they would have, but it was just basically they had 100 things to do in 100 hours. So, you know, they flew to New Zealand and they had a whole list of things and they had it all organised. She'll no doubt have it on her Facebook because she normally does these videos of this stuff and puts music to it and chucks it on her Facebook. They're really cool. So anyway, but you can imagine, you know, this person's gone and done that, they own the business, they come in and then they pick up their thing and so they've just got another big order and they go, wow, this is so cool. Then they go into the staff meeting and they're like, they walk through the door and they're like, all right, so how was everybody's weekend? Because they go in, if they go in through the roof, it's just they're going to lose their staff. By the end of the meeting, you can get them up there if you want. But if you go in the meeting and hide, if your guys have all been on a weekend, and you know at best they're around 2 to 2.5, and you come in at like 22.0, it's like you've just lost them. You know, you're 18 tone levels out. But you know, if you're a good executive, you'll get them all up there by the end of the meeting, ready to play the new game for that week and go out and just produce. And you know, we also, you know, well, this happens a lot in the family. You know, you have a husband and wife. You know, wife's been home all day with the kids, and as the day goes on, it's like, you know, it can be, her tone level can like gradually drop. And because it gets, you know, it's a lot of work with kids. If you spend a whole day with kids and try and keep up with their level, it's exhausting. You know, if your chronic tone level is 4, which is pretty high, and you're trying to be at 22 all day, man, are you worn out. I don't know if you've ever tried to do this. And it's just as wearing out too. If you're at like 22 on the tone scale, someone is at 4, and all day you're trying to get them to go, they're just sucking energy out of you. You're like, eh, and they're slowly speeding up, but they're only speeding up because you're slowing down. It wears you out. And you ever notice with kids, you know, kids also know too, they're different parents and their tone levels. If the parents, like, you know, because they're in their room and they're spinning around, they've got the door shut and all you can hear is a lot of noise. And of course you open the door and what do the kids do? That's right, they go, no. And they, like, first off they're checking out whether it's mum or dad. Because they know that they already know the different willingnesses to experience motion. They're going, ah, that's all right, it's dad, you know, or it's mum. Whichever way around it might be. And of course as a parent you go, hey guys, what's going on? And they know the safest answer is to say nothing. Nothing. Because you can't get in trouble for doing nothing, can you? That's why you want to be careful, like to discipline kids for doing something. Because then they just start to realise that the safest thing to do is nothing. And you ask them to do something, they go, they don't want to do it anymore because if they do something, they get in trouble. They came over and they tried to help you when they were 2 years old to, you know, dry the dishes, and they dropped one and you told them off and you yelled at them. And of course now they don't want to dry dishes anymore. You crushed their willingness to help. And so when they drop the dish, you go, oh, you know, grab the next one and just dry that one. Where you just clean up, you make no fuss over it at all. It's a $2 or a $5 or a $20 dish, who cares? It's much more expensive when they're going to do nothing and you go nuts later on in life. And, you know, and even ask the kids, it's like, you know, where's your brother? And of course you can see him under the bed. You know, and they go, I don't know. I don't know, it's just safe. Because there's only two things you can actually get in trouble for. One's being there and the other one's communicating. If you're not there and you're not communicating, you never get in trouble. So, you know, so we're here, so you come home and, you know, you're pretty content. You're at 2.9 on the tone scale, the day has been pretty good at work. You know, you've got some okay products. And on the way home you think, you know, I'll ring my mum, get her to look after the kids, and I'll take my wife, we'll go to the movies. And so you walk in the door and you go, hey honey, I'm home. And you know you can't hear anything. Honey, I'm home. You don't need to shout, I heard. You go, ooh. And you know, your wife is definitely sitting in this 1.5 to 2.0 band. And of course you come down into a little bit, you know, a bit less interested now in going to the movies. So your wife comes down and says, how come you're so late? You go, oh, well, I'm sorry, but actually I was thinking about ringing my mum, get to look after the kids, and thought we'd go to the movies. And of course your wife comes a bit uptoned, doesn't she? And she might come up to boredom. And at this time though, you've also come down to boredom, so you've matched tone level. So she goes, oh, it's a good idea. What do you want to see? Now he's in boredom, so what's his answer?
I don't know, whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What do you reckon? And now we have a choice of which way we go on the tone scale. It would be very simple if one of them just went up in the interest and said, I think we should see blah. But instead, what happens is one of them decides to drop down. The husband goes, well, I don't know, honey, why have I always got to choose? And she's like, what do you mean? You always choose. It's like, who chose to have kids? Who chose the last holiday? Who found the school for the kids? It's like, you know, you do nothing. What? Nothing? I've been working my ass off all day. I was up at 6 and I do nothing. This is not going well. And of course we're into anger. So what happens next? The wife's like, you know what? I really, actually, deeply hate you. I don't even know why I married you. And now we come into this level of covert hostility. And one thing that people in covert hostility do is they use what we call generalities. They generalise, and this makes the person, one, forget who told them, and secondly, introvert them. So now the husband's in, you know, he's in covert hostility. Well, you know what? My friends, all your friends told me not to marry you. How horrible is that to say? All your friends. So what do you think she does now? She's listing through all my friends? No, no, Kathy wouldn't have said that. And, you know, I wonder why they would have said it. And now she's totally introverted. This is what happens. This is what covert hostility is about. It's beautiful if you're covertly hostile. And so, of course, where does she go to? Goes into grief. Oh, I can't believe you'd say that. My friends are really good. Who said that? And of course, now it's like for the husband, mission accomplished. And of course now, depending on where their real chronic tone level is whether they go through 5 minutes of holding of a grudge, or whether it's now 1 week, you know, he sleeps out on the couch. Because it's like the lower the chronic tone level is, the longer the grudge. And for some people you meet them, they go, yeah, I haven't spoken to my brother for 25 years. Oh, really? Why not? He took my car one day, he didn't even ask. Yeah, this is a good indicator of someone that's really good at staying low on the tone scale. It's just nuts. And it happens a lot.
Footballers, the Whitnell brothers, Lance Whitnell.
Yeah.
His brother didn't invite his kid to a party. That was it. This big family feuds and fights and all sorts of them.
Yeah, families love it. It's, you know, you got to be. I tell you, the family is a great, you know, especially the extended family. You know, it's a great training ground for actually practicing your tone scale. And, you know, being able to keep and remain a spectator and not let people press your buttons. Because that's what the reactive mind is. It's a whole bunch of buttons, and it's like you can press them and a person does a certain thing. And it's like you're just pressing the button. It's like the command. This is a button. Hypnotist does this. It's the button to make the person take his jacket off. And, you know, I know a lot of my wife's buttons. You know, honey, you know, you put on a bit of weight. It's a button. She's just going to go bzzz. You know, she's either going to get really angry at me or she's going to cry. But I know it's a button. And it's, you know, God help me when she goes, do you think I've put on weight? It's just like, don't set me up. And I know I'm being chauvinistic, but this is my life, so I can be. And you know, another one is, I know another one of her buttons. It's like, you know, if I say to her, you know, she's lazy or, you know, you didn't do much today, it's like, you know, this is a button for her. She goes a bit nuts. And so, you know, I know to either avoid those things or only use them, you know, as like torpedoes in times of protection. And I can tell you, it's not worth using them. So people all have buttons though, and it's like it's all this button pressing time. So, you know, families are great at it, especially when you consider, like, you know, just think who you would have been around the most when, or who would have been in your life when you created the most amount of engrams. You know, and, you know, it's for sure your mum. And this is why, you know, you can, quite often your mum can be stimulative to a lot of people. And why you can have the most arguments and the most not feeling, you know, you can't quite love your mum. There's something there. It's because there's so much has happened. You've sat 9 months in your mum's womb. She squeezed you out through garden hose. You know, if that doesn't create an engram, I don't know what. You know, and then the doctors pulled you out around your mum and smacked you on the arse. You know, and this is the start of it. Not to mention if mum and dad were like pretty horny right through the pregnancy. You know, this creates a whole new range of engrams. So you've always got the choice of whether to go up and down. And the reason, one of the reasons we show you this is because you can actually plot the tone scale to some degree on the B trait. And we can pretty much look at it and say at minus 100 would be 0.0 on the tone scale.
Do you ever have a test to come back like that?
Yeah. You just got to, you check your printer to see if it's running out of blue ink. You think I'm joking, don't you? Although I look at it and go, oh, there must be something wrong with the printer. But yeah, no, we do. We get, it's amazing. It's like, hey?
Greg said before he got one.
Yeah, we do. We see them. And it's like, I've got to tell you, it's like we actually see, what we test is people looking for jobs. So it's like we get an unfair cross-section of the community because we get the more active side of the community. But like if you went out and just tested people at random on the street, you know, or people that can't make it on the street, then, you know, forget it. The sort of tests you'd be getting are like horrible. At around minus 20, we reckon this is around about 2.0 on the tone scale. And then at plus 100 we could say, in fact, sort of anything at 80 or above that's not compulsive. Because remember, it's like if it goes compulsive, it's going to change, and we'll talk about that soon. But anything at 80 above is 4 plus on the tone scale. So we know like at around 0 is around about 3.0, actually, which we haven't brought up, have we? 3.0 conservatism. And these other ones that just came up was pain at 1.8. This is like emotional pain. You know, I'm sitting in my brand new Audi A5 and look in the rear vision mirror and I hear screeching and see smoke and I know that my car's about to be hit and this is painful. Oh no. What else came up in here? I think strong interest, mild interest, they were all pretty much there. Oh, cheerfulness came in here at 3.5. You can start to see how contented, conservative, strong interest, cheerfulness, enthusiasm. You can see how they all run into each other. And to really know this stuff really well, it's like what I suggest you do is bury your head in a dictionary for an afternoon and clear up every one of these emotional tones to see what they all really mean, because it's like there's quite some definitions to them all. And then once you do that, and one of the things you can do is what we call mood drills, and you can actually like get a book and read lines out of the book in all the different tone levels. That's tough. And you can also do what we call 50-foot mood drills, where you do it over 50 feet. So you've got to really like be able to drive the communication over at any tone level. And you'll find that a person actually has trouble with a lot of tone levels. A lot of people can't get angry, or a lot of people are stuck in certain tones. It's like they try and do every tone level at a 1. And they're not, actually doing this drill actually gets them out of being stuck on the tone scale, allows them to be more elastic. And it's a great exercise to do if you want to be an actor. Because it's so cool to be able to just at any time pull on, just put on any one of these tone levels. Go, I'll use that one, I'll use that one. And there's even more than what's here. We haven't even got them all. Aesthetics came up at 6.0. This is when a person starts to really be creative and appreciate art, and appreciate beauty. Is at aesthetics. And it's like, as women notice this, they notice when a man actually appreciates their beauty at 6.0, it's a very nice feeling of an acknowledgement. But when a man appreciates their beauty down at down lower in the tone scale, it's like it's a horrible flow for a woman, because all they see is a woman as a body. And the women go, ugh, there's something wrong with that guy, it's creepy. And the other one that came up was action at 20.0. So you can see you get into action and then you make a game out of something. And we'll talk about this end of the tone scale a little bit more later on today, or maybe first thing in the morning when we consolidate the first 3 traits. And so we get to learn a lot. In actual fact, in the back of this book is a chart which shows you about 50 different things that occur with each tone level. Because I talked about like the physiological reaction, but there's also how a person handles communication and how they handle speech, how they listen, how they recover from bad news, recover from injuries and illnesses. So you can see this chart here. Here's the tone levels, which go from -3 up to +40. And each one of these columns is a different manifestation that occurs with a person at each one of these levels. And then on top of that, you can also look through this chart to try and plot someone's tone level and look at where they fit into most of these things, and that will be their tone level. So, a little bit of extra. If you want to take it, anyone want to take it home tonight, read the whole thing and do a test tomorrow, you're welcome to it. I actually read this book on my honeymoon. I was leaving, I thought, yeah.
For marriage, is it?
Yeah. Of course I did.
Yeah.
The video's on. Hi, honey. Who knows? It's like, my luck, she'll just pull out that exact point. No, my wife's beautiful. I love her a lot.
Can I just ask why the 15 level on the B trait is significant at 15? Like, is that at like 2.0 on the tone scale?
15? Oh, you mean when it goes into the high range?
Yes. Yeah, the middle to high. Or a 0, like middle.
Well, no, at 0, we reckon the persons that are around conservatism. See, interestingly enough, like when the test comes in with the B at -19 or -20 or above, it's like you start to go, oh, good. It's like it's actually not. It's okay. Most tests actually, like I'd say, most people in Australia, maybe 60 or 70% will have their B below -20. And it's also a measurement of a person winning in life, because the B trait goes up in relation to a person being able to pull off and get results. They're able to overcome obstacles that move them closer to their goals, and the B goes up. So if a person has a low B, they're not really winning. And even if you see a person with really low B and they're really productive, quite often they're not actually getting results in an area of their life where they feel it's part of their goals or their purpose for living. And I've seen a guy run quite a large company with 60 staff, turning over $8 million, and he had a B trait of like -90. And I was doing his evaluation with him, going over the test, and I said to him, I go, Dave, it's like, it seems like, mate, you're really actually not doing what you want to do. You don't feel like anything you've created is really a success. He looks for a little while and he goes, no, you're right. He goes, I always wanted to be a rafting or adventure guide. And he goes, but my dad told me to get into this business or this career path, and I've sort of just ended up here. But totally not happy about it. So he basically stepped aside within 2 months and, went off for 3 or 4 months up on the Tully River, and he was a rafting guide. and pretty much doesn't work anymore, just like goes off and does some property developments and picks up the checks from his business. And you know, I haven't retested him, but I reckon his B trait would be starting to come up. And that'll wear off because he'll probably end up making a whole business out of rafting, you know, or something that's more on his purpose. And so someone with a low B can just be off purpose, but they still are going to manifest these lower tones on the tone scale, because when they're not doing well in life, it drags them down the tone scale, and then people around them will start to not do so well in life as well. And so it's definitely, you know, it's entering below -20 or into the caution zones, and you really don't want to hire people that are going to create flows below -20, and preferably not below 0. People that handle detail, you'll get away with it. You know, someone handling the stop-start sign, the DE is more important. If they're -90 on the B, it's like, okay. Funny enough, quite often they're not. They're actually quite content people. So, to finish off on this tone scale, if we look at the top end, we're looking at people that are more simple to deal with. They're more into speed. At the bottom end, these guys are more into, like, you know, complicating things, dishonesty. On the top, you know, into ethics, and meaning, you know, the person can actually improve things around them, and honesty. Below, down here into slow, can't confront, meaning it's like, you know, they don't really look at what they're looking at. So they might have this big problem here, but they just can't. It's like Quicksilver, I'm not going to look at it. Up here we have understanding. Down here is confused, and the bottom of the tone, or below, basically 2.0 and lower on the tone scale, is all the inflow side of life. Whereas up here higher is the outflow side of life. There's more interest. Down here it's interesting, you know, more. These guys want to be important. Up here, importance isn't a big deal. It's like, you know, people are striving to achieve things because they want to, you know, have some goal or some purpose for it. Down here, they're striving to achieve things because they want to be important and get admiration. And up here, it's like, you know, a person's causing things to happen. They can take responsibility. Down here, we have, you know, people losing and having bad luck and irrational. You know, if you want to know the anatomy of luck, it's like, you know, learn the tone scale. And this is winning, and people think in futures. Down here, the guys are at effect. So, oh, look what happened to me. You know, victim is down here on the tone scale. And so when someone's being a victim, it's like they're being low on the tone scale. You know? So when a person, that's why, you know, I'd hate to be, you know, on the news they say the victims. And so I hope there's never me included in that. Some people, they live to be a victim. Oh, look what you did to me. I'm going to sue you. Because it's like, it was horrible that you left that extension lead there. And I tripped over it. No one trip over mine. And so this is basically the tone scale from 0. It actually goes up to 40.0, called Serenity of Beingness. And so you can start to see, oh, thank you. You can start to see how this B trait really has a lot of bearing on the rest of the test. Because, you know, how a person uses their attention will be a lot to do with the B trait. If the B is low with higher attention, it's like they have, you know, good attention on being able to stop and slow things down. If they have a high B with a high A, now they have they have lots of attention, and they're going to use it to create flows and create futures. Now, when the B trait goes compulsive, and of course by compulsive we mean it goes above the D. Now we get a person that's obviously being compulsively happy. And we also know that we don't really know where they sit on the tone scale, because we don't know. We know that we're going to see some social tone. But if for the chronic tone, we don't know. And also what we know is people that have like a compulsive B is they tend to be optimistic which is nice, but without taking any responsibility for it. And so it's like, you know, if this is your sales manager and it's getting to it's week 3 in the month and they've only done 1/10 of the budget, and you go see them and they have the compulsive B sales manager in this position, oh man, I'm concerned about the sales. It's like, how are we going to make budget? Man, it was going to be fine. It's like, I know it is. It's like, you know, it's going to happen. Trust me, it's okay. And so you do, and you come back at the end of the month and you find out nothing's okay. You know, because the optimism was nice, but optimism doesn't solve it. And there's a lot of courses around now. It's like, you know, have anyone heard of or done NLP? Yeah, or you know, there's the the law of attraction and The Secret, all these things. It's like, yeah, there's some truth to them, because it's like partly we know we get what we put our attention on, but actually what we see, and when I test guys that have done these sorts of courses, 1 for 1, their B trait, well, I shouldn't say 1 for 1, but a lot of the time their B trait goes compulsive. And so what's happened is they've become very optimistic about things, but they're actually like not really changing their activity or actions to bolster it up. And so life feels pretty good, but nothing's really changing around them. And in actual fact, sometimes things are starting to get worse, but they just feel okay about it now, whereas before things weren't getting better and they didn't feel okay about it. And so I'm not really sure whether this is an improvement or not. But in the workplace, when this B goes compulsive, it's like, you know, it's just something you've got to be cautious about, not knowing where they sit on a tone scale, and also being this optimism. Like, don't take optimism as the solution. And it's like, yes, be optimistic, but now show me exactly the actions you're going to take to make sure that this pulls off okay. And then I want to know that they're going to happen, because when this is happening, this is like what we'd call a danger condition, when you know that something's not going to happen. And this is the time when it is okay to bypass and to start taking on the junior's role to make sure that the whole organisation or area of the organisation doesn't just drop off because someone's not getting the job done. And so the other thing we can do too is we can actually look, we can look at the H trait. And when the B is compulsive, we actually look at the H and cut it with the H and get an idea of where the B trait might sit from a chronic tone level. But we'll look at it again when we get to the H trait, because this won't be in your drills. But so if B is above D and H is not above D, we can actually cut the B with the H and get an idea. We can say, okay, the H is at 15, and you know this is at 60. And so it's compulsive though, so we can assume that the B is at 15. And it'll give us some indication where the person sits when they're not compulsive. Make sense? Now another thing just to be wary of, which is like warning signs, is when B is the lowest. So out of all the 10 traits, when B is the lowest, we be careful. And the reason we're careful is one thing we know with this personality test is the person will dramatise their lowest trait. It'll be the trait that they'll dramatise the most. So like if A is the lowest, it's like, you know, this will become really obvious. They're like really disorganised. They really wear the wrong clothes. They really say the wrong things, you know. If, you know, let's say J, which is communication, is the lowest, they're going to be really quiet. They're not going to originate communication. And if B is the lowest, they dramatise this with stopping, stop and slow. Becomes much more dramatic. And so when you see a test with lowest B, even if the B is high, in fact it can sometimes be worse when the B is at 40 and everything is above it and it's still lowest B. Now it's big warning signs, and it's like you need to reference check the person a lot and make sure that this lowest B condition hasn't got in the way of getting flows, and actually the person's actually not destructive. Alright, so it's a big warning sign when B is the lowest to check and check and check, and sometimes quite often if we have a lot of applications, even with good production checks, we'll normally just put them all to one side and come back to them if we're still looking, because there's just a lot more work in checking out someone with the lowest B. And out of all the hiring errors that have been done with Performia around the planet, the biggest thing that stands out is lowest B. It's like, probably half the hiring errors have been people that have hired lowest Bs, and that's created half the hiring errors. And so they're a big source of trouble, whether they just don't arrive for the job, or whether they arrive for the job and they don't stay in the job, or whether they stay in the job and create some sort of problem in the job, or when they leave the job and now they sue, or have some sort of problem. So yeah, be very wary of lowest B, and be ready to put in the yards if you get one of them, and really check the person out and make sure you know all about them and there's no maybes. And when it comes to doing that, sometimes it can take 8 or 10 hours work, so that's why you might not always decide to pursue them. Alright, so there's a lot of information on the B trait, would you agree? There's the most amount of information. It's the one that, so don't think that every other trait's going to be this much information and take this long. And I think personally I could probably talk about the B trait for about 2 days and just keep giving you so much information on it, but we've got the most important pieces out of it, and enough to be able to know, who we can place in different jobs based on the B trait, and understand a little bit about how we can handle different levels on the B trait and emotional tone or emotions in the workplace. Because one thing we know is emotions, or human reaction and emotion, is the biggest barrier to production. If you removed human emotion and reaction, it would be like you would have removed probably 90% of the barriers to getting things done. So we can't remove it all, but we can definitely decide not to pay so much attention to it, understand it, be able to step around it, and create a workplace where we can get people to park it to some degree. Okay, so do your drills. Now when you do your drills, obviously the first thing that we want to look at is just check out the D trait to make sure it's above 32. Then look at the D-E relationship to see if the person, likes challenge and change and routine and these sort of things. And then look at the B trait. Because the B trait now will give you the intention that the person goes in with the rest of their traits. Because the B trait can change a test from being absolute nightmare to absolutely perfect just by changing the B trait. Okay, so go through and then we can just look at the rest of the traits.